Your granny square sweater looks amazing. Or at least it did until you wore it twice, and then suddenly it's giving sad blanket energy. And I've been there. So I created a new kind of granny square that isn't just cute, it's engineered to hold its shape. You build tension as you stitch, so your sweater or whatever you're making has a chance to stand up like the sails on a Frank Gehry building. I'm Lee, and today I'm gonna share with you my secret for building a granny square that's actually designed for fashion. We're talking structure, strength, silhouette. See this puff? That's not just texture, that's tension. Tension equals structure, which means no sagging, no stretching out, no heartbreak. You don't need blocking, you don't need interfacing, you don't even really need hope, you just need the right stitch. And this new granny square that I'm gonna teach you will transform your yarn into fashion grade fabric. And it's the first step in learning how to create your own crochet clothing without needing a pattern. So grab your hook. We can do this together. I'm gonna show you how you can puff up your granny squares to create show-stopping crochet fashion. We're gonna begin with a slip knot on our hook, and we're going to chain 4. Then we're gonna take our hook, go through that very first little stitch, and pull our yarn through with a little slip stitch so that we form a nice chain, which we can begin to crochet into. Sounds a lot like the beginning of a granny square, because it is. For every round, we're gonna start with a chain of 2 that's going to replace what would otherwise be a double crochet. So we're gonna chain 2, and then we're gonna begin our puff stitch. So the way we do this is you yarn over, take your hook, go into the center of your ring, grab your yarn, and pull it back out. You want to make sure that you fully extend your hook back out to the length of that first chain of 2, just to make your puff stitches nice and big. So that's our first one. Now we're going to do it 4 more times. So yarn over, into the loop, come back out. There's 2, yarn over, into the loop, come back out. That's 3, yarn over, into the loop, come back out. There's 4. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your hook with all of these loops on it, grab your yarn, and pull it through all of the loops on your hook. So you should only have 1 loop after that still on your hook, and then chain of 1 to close your cute little puff. Now we're going to chain 2. If you think about it, closing that puff was a chain of 1, and then you did a chain of 2. So really you can combine that into a chain of 3, similar to your granny corner. We're going to begin our next puff stitch. Instead of that chain of 2 is going to be a double crochet. We yarn over and go into the center of our ring and do a double crochet out of the center there. Now we begin our puff again. So yarn over, into the ring, grab a yarn, pull it back out 1, yarn over, into the ring, pull it back out 2, yarn over, into the ring, pull it back out 3, yarn over, into the ring, pull it back out 4. Now we're gonna grab our yarn and in one fell swoop, pull it all the way through all the stitches on our hook so that we only have 1 left. And then we are going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're ready to go again. We begin our 3rd puff stitch cluster with a double crochet into the center of the ring, and then we're going to do our puff stitch again. Yarn over, into the center, pull it out. 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to grab our yarn and pull it all the way through. And I think a nice way to do it, because you can get stuck, is to grab it and turn your hook downward as you're pulling through. And that will keep it from getting caught. If you pull it with your hook upwards, you might grab some of the other loops. So if you just put it downwards and it's towards the top, makes it a lot easier. That does take a little bit of practice. So just keep going. Then we're gonna do our chain of 3. 1, 2, 3. We now have 3 puff stitch clusters. We're gonna yarn over and do our 4th with our double crochet right in the center. Puff stitch of 4, yarn over, into the center, out 1, yarn over, into the center 2, yarn over, into the center 3, yarn over, into the center 4. We're gonna pull through again, and then we're gonna do our chain of 3. 1, 2, 3. We're finishing our first round, so we're gonna go and find the top of that chain of 2 that we started with, and we're just gonna do a slip stitch through there, and we have our first round of our puffed granny square. If you were changing your yarn, this is a great time to pull the yarn through in a little slip knot, cut it, and then start again in an open space. But for this example, I'm going to keep going. You normally creep your yarn behind, you can do that, or since the top of that puff stitch is really just one stitch, if you do a slip stitch back into that empty hole there, you aren't creating any extra bulk on that. So that's what I'll do to just hop over to the new space. We're beginning the second round, so we're going to begin with a chain of 2 in the place of our usual double crochet. And now we're in the corner, a lot like your usual granny square, and we're going to do our puff stitch of 4. Yarn over 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab your yarn, pull it through, and then this is our first corner, so we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now in this same space, because we're forming this corner here, we're going to do another full puff stitch starting with a double crochet in that same space. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab your yarn, pull it all the way through, but wait. This would be when we're going to change to the other corner here. And in your traditional granny square, you're probably going to do at least a chain of 2, but we want something that's a little bit tighter here because we keep saying tension, right? Spine, structure, scaffolding, all of these things. We want it to be a little bit tighter. So we're only going to do a chain of 1, and then we're immediately going to jump into this next corner here with our next double crochet, and then begin the puff stitch in that corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab our yarn, pull it through. We have now jumped this side and are starting to form the familiar granny square shape. But since we're on the corner, we're going to do a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3, and then go back into the same space with our double crochet, and then puff of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull the yarn through. We're now on another side, so we're only going to do a chain of 1 to skip over, yarn over, and then in our new space begin the next double crochet. Then 4 puffs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab the yarn, pull through. We're on a corner again. 1, 2, 3. Chain of 3. And then we're going to do another puff stitch in that same corner. Double crochet, puff of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab that yarn, pull it through. And again, we're on a side, so we're only going to do a chain of 1, and then hop into this other space here to do our last corner. What you can see developing is that anytime you're on a corner, you're going to do a chain of 3 between your puff stitches. Anytime you're on a side, you're just going to do a chain of 1. And this is going to repeat for the rest of the square. So just like a normal granny square, that space between the puffs, that chain of 1, is what gives us our space for our non-corner puffs, and then on the corner, that chain of 3 gives us space for our corner puffs. We just keep going. We work these in clusters a bit differently than your granny square. We have like a cluster of puffs instead. They're all a little bit too big for the space they occupy. That's why they start puffing out a bit. When you're doing a round of puffs, they might look a little bit flat, like a little sad ravioli. Just give it a minute. On the next round, when you come back through and are kind of squeezing it all together, it'll help it all lift up and become exactly what you want it to be. So sad ravioli will go away, just give it a minute. And there we have 4 rounds. I think 6 rounds is great. Any bigger than 6 rounds and you lose that lovely tension. Smaller than 6 and it just feels like it's more work. And the last round is going to be exactly the same. You want your puffs to kind of snap into place like a good ponytail. That's how you know it's doing its job. Now, if we compare her to a regular granny square, there's just not nearly as much give with this puff structure. It's tighter, but there's also something just elevated about the puff stitch. She looks like she's ready for fashion week. This one's not going to droop, it's not going to warp, and with it we can build some incredible things. Like this skirt that should be too heavy to hold its own shape, but in this structure it does just fine. that structure allows the crochet to behave a lot more like fabric than it would normally a crochet piece. Meaning you can design pieces that will actually hold their shape, but also be able to do it with just your crochet hook, which is pretty incredible. It's really about rethinking the way we are approaching crochet and garment making. If this puffed granny tutorial started to get you thinking about what crochet can do, just wait until you stitch it into something real. There's a free PDF waiting for you below. And if you're ready to learn how to make crochet clothing that actually fits, drapes, and looks like high fashion, and if you want the best community cheering you on, check out the link to join the Stitch Lab. We don't just follow patterns, we are puffing our way into the future. Next week, I'm going to show you all of my favorite granny square clothing that I've made over the years. And in 2 weeks, we're building a high fashion puffed granny t-shirt that just might ruin regular shirts for you forever. So don't forget to start practicing. Happy crocheting. See you next time.